our thoughts, our feelings, our beliefs, our experiences, and everything that is in this tangible universe are part of the world of form. So all thought produces form at some level, one of those levels, we could say. And A Course in Miracles also says, as part of that same truth teaching, that there are no idle thoughts, IDLE. So none of our thoughts don't bring forth a result at some level. All thought produces form at some level. Therefore, it stands to reason that we can affirm that there are no thoughts that don't produce form. In other words, there are no idle thoughts. So at this time of year, there seems to be a collective agreement that the thoughts and beliefs about ourselves, based on our history, based on the past, could be more easily, quickly transformed. In other words, we can wipe the slate clean. We can start anew. There's a collective agreement. Yes, we can do this. We can start exercise programs. We can quit smoking. We can start healthy eating. We can, maybe people's got some other ways that they start anew. People join a gym, all these different things that people do at the beginning of the year. And of course, that's one of the reasons why my year-long Masterful Living program begins at this time. Because people think, yes, I'm going to do A Course in Miracles lessons this year. I'm going to do Masterful Living this year. I'm going to make a difference in my life and my family's life this year by working at the level of the mind with Jennifer, with the Course. So there's this, that's why I do that the way that I do, because that was my guidance to do. And so I love this sense of there's a greater willingness to go the other way, to do something different, to start anew, to start the lessons. All of that is happening at this time. And so it feels like there's a greater willingness, there's a greater support from the invisible, there's a greater possibility. We haven't stunk up the new year yet, right, with our bad habits, and we haven't ruined everything yet, if we look at it from an ego perspective. I remember the last time somebody said to me a few years ago, I don't remember what happened. Something happened in the morning. I was somewhere, maybe in a store. I don't remember what it was exactly, but they said, now don't let this ruin your day. And I kind of stepped back and I thought, what are they talking about? Ruin my day. And then I remembered, oh, that's right. I can remember when I was in my 20s, let's say, and I lived in Manhattan and I worked at the New York Shakespeare Festival. I get dressed in the morning, put on my pantyhose and my dress and whatever. And on the way to work, I run my hose, right? Or spill coffee on me. And then it's like, my day is ruined. I can remember thinking, oh, this happened at 8 o'clock in the morning. My day is ruined. It's ruined. It's all downhill from here. I have an excuse now to say, F it. Who cares? I don't have to try anymore. It's over. This day's already in the dump heap. Might as well just start drinking at lunchtime or something. Not that I actually did that, but some people do, So, and not that it's a bad thing to drink or even to drink at lunchtime. I've been out to lunch with Course in Miracles teachers who drink at lunchtime. So it just, my own thoughts about it. For me, if I started drinking at lunchtime, that would be a sign of the apocalypse. So just for me, But anyway, so the new year, I say the new year still has that new year smell to it, and we haven't stunk it up yet. And so it's simply our thoughts and beliefs about it, but they're working together for our good. And that's why I really like to do as much as we can together to change our mind about ourselves and our life and our experience at this time of year. And I see it consistently that many Course in Miracles students are absolutely willing to listen to lectures, to have spiritual conversations, to read books. But if you ask them, just think about what kind of day you'd like to have. You know, the kinds of things that it talks about in the Course, the rules for decision. Think about what kind of day you'd like to have. Think about how holy your relationship could be. You know, think about these things. People don't actually want to think about them. They don't. They'll hunt for false beliefs, and they're happy to analyze the negative thoughts and how the negative thoughts produce form, etc. But just thinking about what would you like? You know, what's the deep desire of your heart? What kind of year would you like to have? That kind of thing. A lot of people will be like, yeah, I'm going to do that. And then it comes February, March, and they still haven't done it because they don't actually wish to stand in the place where they begin to take real responsibility for what they see and what their experience is. That's something all spiritual students have a tendency to back away from. Because there's the mentality that we're victims, life is happening to us, and we have to manage and cope with what's happening because we're just victims. So having good managing coping skills is going to produce a better experience. And this year in Masterful Living, we are, in all our classes, we're going to be focusing on there's nothing outside of us. We are responsible for everything, everything, everything. And no blame, but just standing there going, wow, look at this. Because to me, that's one of the most helpful things that I realized finally, instead of thinking, I'm doing this to myself, I'm my own worst enemy, I'm cutting off my nose to spite my face, and all those things, which certainly were true for me for most of my life. I suddenly saw, if I am the one who's producing these results with my thoughts, I can produce totally different results by changing my thinking. Like, I had been aware of that teaching for many years. I had taught teaching for many years, but then I came to a place where I realized, for real, like, this is not just a thought to be aware of. This is not just a teaching to think I know. This is how I can live my life, taking responsibility for everything I see, because there is nothing outside of me. Taking responsibility for everything I see, because nothing is outside of me. Really saying, I'm going to live from the place of accepting that these are the basic facts of my life. These are the very facts of my relationships. These are the facts of my finances. These are the facts of my work and my career. And these are the facts of my car and my house and every other thing in my life. I'm responsible for the meaning I make of things. I am responsible for how I view things. I am responsible for all the interpretations. And I am responsible for the thoughts that brought this form into my experience. and there's nothing outside of me. So Russia's not outside of me. Ukraine is not outside of me. The Unabomber's not outside of me. The presidential election is not outside of me. Nothing is outside of me. Everything works together for my good. So, and I'm willing to accept my good, and I'm willing to say, I am the dreamer of this dream. That is a level of spiritual maturity that even many spiritual teachers will not agree to. They won't. They won't. They think they will, but they won't in practice. In practice. One of my favorite, I love Gary Zukov. And when back in the 80s, I guess, yeah, late 80s, early 90s, in there, I was reading and rereading Gary Zukov's book, Seat of the Soul. I just loved it. It was so helpful to me at that time. And then I had an opportunity to hear Gary speak in the agape community. I don't know when it was, probably late 90s or something. And he told a story about himself. And I've retold this story a number of times because I think it's such a great story. So at this point that he was telling this story, he had been on Oprah many, 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 many times. And his whole life blew up because he was on Oprah so much. And people really were just loving him. And so he's here, and he's at Agape, and he said, I'll tell you a story about me. He said, after being on Oprah so many times, I was very recognizable. People are always giving me the star treatment, all of that. He said, one time I went to give a talk somewhere, and as usual, they sent a car and someone to pick me up at the airport. He said, but this time they sent some college kid in a kind of broken down car to pick me up. And when he met me at the curb and introduced himself, I was like, wait, what's happening now? He said, now as I got into the car in this broken down car and he's driving me to the hotel, I'm thinking, this is outrageous. How dare they send this kind of a car? How dare they treat me this way? Don't they understand who I am? I'm an international celebrity and speaker. And then he said, I just started to laugh like, oh my God, what has happened to me? Look at me. Oh my God, that's not who I am at all. So the ego caught him up. Right? So even spiritual teachers, of course, can get caught up in the moment, in the false perception, the projection. And those moments are delightful, wonderful, especially if we remember to laugh quickly, right? Or at least eventually, because that for him was a healing in his mind. The realization that thought pattern, that he was special, was still there. Was still there, a little bit of specialness. And he had been fed so much affirmation of his specialness that it fed whatever bit of specialness was inside his consciousness. But then he realized, oh my God, I don't want any part of that. And he laughed, and then he could enjoy his experience, and there was nothing to complain about. And he could enjoy the person who picked him up and whatever was happening with them. And so every day affords us that opportunity, no matter what's going on, that there's an opportunity to experience the love of God in that moment and to transform the moment and make it a healing moment. And this is one of the most basic tenets we hold in my year-long program, Masterful Living, is that every disturbance in our mind, and of course, this is a pure teaching of A Course in Miracles, every disturbance is an opportunity to transform the false beliefs, the ego identification, and to set ourselves free. However, if we move into managing and coping, if we think the problem is outside, like if Zukov had actually maybe said, "I'm not getting in that car. I'm taking a sedan, a taxi or something, and this is unacceptable," then there wouldn't have been the healing in that moment. If he had said, just stewed all the way to the hotel, and then when he got to the hotel, told his business manager, "You need to let those people know that this is not acceptable, blah, blah, blah," then the healing wouldn't have happened. So instead, something else would have happened to escalate it, right? There would have been somebody said, "That Zukov, he's difficult. He's a pain in the butt. He's a prima donna. You got to watch out for him." And then there would be something else to bring him to humility and back to his right mind. And if that didn't work for the healing, there would have been another thing and another thing and another thing, each one escalating, because that's what we would like when we're in our right mind. We don't wish to continue with the false, with the insane, with the troubled things. So yesterday I did a 4-hour workshop. It's the kickoff for the New Year reboot program that I do. Who was there yesterday? Yeah, so we've got a few people who were there yesterday. So this is going to be a little bit of a review for you, a quick review, but I think it bears reviewing. And for those who weren't there, I hope it'll be really helpful. Because this is one of, I think, the biggest things that people could get tremendous benefit from this year if you actually pay attention to what I'm about to say and you really take it to heart. So you may wish to, I hope the transcript is on. Yes, it is. You may wish to take notes. You may wish to come back and listen to this. You can always find the recordings and whatnot. Because I see it, one of the most common mistakes or errors or self-sabotage that spiritual students do. And it's this, it's that ego is running their spiritual practice. And because ego is running their spiritual practice, they may be doing some prayer, some meditation, reading the lessons. They read the lessons, but they don't do them, right? You read the lessons, but you don't do them. You read them, but then if somebody asked you 5 minutes later, "So what did the lesson say for today?" You're like, And I get that. I get that. Oh my God, of course I get that. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with you or anything. It's just that the mind's not really willing yet. Mind's not really willing yet. And that's just, we're in progress. It's no big deal. But one of the things that we do is we'll do some of that, or we'll read a spiritual book or something, and yet we're not applying it. And then during the day, we find ourselves, instead of prioritizing our spiritual implementation of the lesson, like everywhere you go to get your car washed, you go to work, you take your children to school, you pick them up from soccer, you do all these things every day. Instead of implementing the lessons all through your day, your mind is focused on the past or the future. And so you're not really working the lessons. You're not really living A Course in Miracles. It doesn't mean you're wrong or stupid or bad. It's just the ego thought system has a an unlimited number of distractions, because this whole world is like a video game where it's just, are you going to get through the first level of distractions and challenges? And are you going to keep choosing love and forgiving and developing humility and becoming more kind, more patient, more generous of heart? And then, oh, you pop into the second level, and now you can see even more clearly. And you see, oh, there's even more benefits here. If I do this and do that, then wow, that feels really good. I really love being of service in this way. I'm being of service simply to give and not to get anything. Oh, I really like, this is the best kind of service of all. I'm not even going to tell them what I'm doing. I'm just going to go clean up that trash, and I'm never going to tell anybody I did it. Oh my gosh, I love doing this. It feels so good. So we have all kinds of ways, as we keep increasing our awareness, that we can see and feel and sense and know that we can choose love. And if it just feels better and better and more peaceful, more harmonious. And of course, forgiveness offers everything we need, because we're just repeating the past. We're just reliving the past again and again and again and again, reliving the past through our experience of our belief systems. And the only way to clear those belief systems is through forgiveness. And what forgiveness actually is releasing our attachment to the meaning we made of things, to our interpretation of things. No one can ever do that for us. We can't go to a Reiki person. We can't go to a guru. We can't go to anything that can be like a car wash for our belief systems, without our full, complete desire and willingness to let them go. And if we have that desire, that willingness to let them go, then we don't have to go to the Reiki person or the car wash or any of those other places to let them go. Right where we are, that higher Holy Spirit self can get her done instantaneously. Our willingness is all that's required. So, going back to what I was sharing in the New Year reboot yesterday, what are your clear priorities this year? What are your spiritual priorities this year? Because one of the things I discovered 20 years ago was, if I just focus on living as the Christ, oh, I think somebody's having a healing. Wow. My throat's closing up. That's first chakra stuff. So that's calling things into being. Heaven, we're calling heaven into being, because we can, and because we're done with hell. So, what are your actual priorities this year? Forget about buying a new house. Yeah, you got a priority. Forget about healing your leg. Yeah, that's a priority. But if you are interested in a full realization of yourself as the Christ, if you're interested, if your priority is to see the Christ in your brothers and sisters, if your priority is to completely stop complaining and to never complain again, if your priority is to be patient in every situation, in every circumstance, to be unbotherable, not because you're inured to pain, but because you are seeing with God's vision. If you make these kinds of things your priorities, that's what you will experience. So you can make it a priority to earn more money, to, I don't know, get your house painted, whatever those kinds of things are. But you can make seeing with Christ vision your priority. And then everything in your life will support that, because it has to. If your priority is seeing with Christ vision, then everything has to support that. Why? Because there's nothing outside of you. Your mind is the mind of God. There is not one thing in this world that is against you. Everything that we see in the world that feels like evil, that feels like ick, that feels like the Nazis are returning, that feels like what's happening with Russia and Ukraine, what's happening with Israel and Hamas, and however you think about any of those things, whatever you're seeing that you think looks like evil. Ernest Holmes said it so beautifully in The Science of Mind. He said, that which seems to be evil is that which appears to be destructive. Evil is that which appears to be destructive. Now, just over here on the other side of me are huge glass doors. The whole wall is glass doors. And above me, glass doors. Glass skylights. The skylights are covered with 4 inches of snow. And outside, winter storm is raging, windy, snowy. And that appears to be destructive. Winter definitely appears to be destructive. The leaves die and fall off the trees, and all the flowers die, and everything seems to go to death. But winter is necessary. Winter is what makes it possible for the rebirth to happen, right? And spring and the renewal to happen. You can't have the renewal in the spring without the winter. You just can't have it. It doesn't work. So everything that appears to be evil, if you think of it about that, it's that which appears to be destructive. But if you know that everything is of God and there is nothing that's not, then there has to be something helpful in even the worst of the worst. Because every single person gets pushed by the pain in their life. Some people have a lot of pain and some people have a little, but everyone is pushed by the pain. We can live from joy. That's what A Course in Miracles tells us. You don't have to learn through pain. You don't have to learn through the contrast of pain and joy, but you usually choose to. But you don't have to. It's totally optional. And it doesn't mean we're stupid or bad or wrong. We're just exploring. We're just exploring. So for me, that's a priority all the time. I'm not interested in learning through pain anymore. I'm only interested in learning through joy. I'm interested in experiencing the joy of God and learning through direct insight. And when I have direct insight, it feels joyful to me because I'm remembering the truth that sets me free. So that's a priority for me every year, being loving at all times, in all situations and circumstances. That is a priority for me. Now, I'd like to have the money to buy my own home. I would like to do that. And I would like to be in a relationship with a man who's my partner. And I'm not right now. And I'd like that. But my priority is living as the Christ, seeing the Christ in my brothers and sisters, being loving at all times, learning through joy, and demonstrating the benefits of being unbotherable and living as the Christ and learning through joy and demonstrating that, sharing that with my brothers and sisters. Those are my priorities. I also have a priority to enjoy my family and friends and the beings in my life, including Bodhi and Sattva, my dog and cat. So these are my priorities. And what I know and have known for 20 years is that if I choose to live focused on the Christ, everything is going to take care of itself. I don't have to work so hard to figure anything out anymore. And that is the truth of it. I realized that, and I said, I'm going to prove that that's true. And I have been living my life this way ever since. And what I find now is there's very little I find myself having to figure out. Very little. And here's an example of what I'm talking about. I'm in my family house in Maine, and this last year in November, my friend Bill Free, who many of you know is Course in Miracles teacher, I was having a hard time finding someone to replace some windows and skylights in 3 rooms. It was a big job and complicated. And Bill is a retired builder of houses. That was his main career till he became Course in Miracles student and then teacher. And so I was visiting him and Lisa last spring, and he and I had talked about different ways to do the remodeling and ideas to give the architect and everything. And he instantly got what needed to happen and how to redo it. And the guy who built the house was like, nah, I don't think you're going to be able to solve this problem. You're just going to have to roof those skylights over. It's going to totally change the feel of the house. And I was like, Bill, I'm so bummed about this. And Bill just looked at it and he said, no, here's what you do. And he knew exactly what to do. And I'm like, oh my God, it's genius. It's brilliant. As soon as he showed it to me, I'm like, of course, that's what we can do. So this last spring, last April, I was visiting him and Lisa for a few days on the way up here to the house. He said, so have you found somebody to do the windows for you? I said, Bill, nobody wants to take it on. It's too big a job. And they don't have the workers, and it's awful. And these windows have to be replaced. The wall is rotting that the windows are in. And so he was just looking at me and he went, I'll do it for you. I'm like, oh, Bill, you don't want to come fix those windows in the house. You've got your conferences and you're going to India, you're doing all these things. He's like, nope, I want to do it. I'll do it for you and your family. I'd like to do it. It'll be fun for me. I'll enjoy it. So that's exactly what he did. He came up and he did the work, and he stayed here for a couple of weeks and got it all done. And when he was here, he needed to hire a helper for a couple of things he couldn't do by himself. And so that he found a helper, and the helper was working with him. And the helper told me, he said, that guy Billy is a genius. Boy, he just knew every move before it needed to be made. And he just was like 3 steps ahead of everything. And he was just brilliant. It was unbelievable. And he told that to Bill himself when they were working side by side. He's like, gosh, you're older than me. And how are you so fast and quick? And you're so like, you totally get everything. You have this incredible understanding here. And so, I said, well, you know what it is, Bill? And he said, yeah, I know what it is. And it's just when you're tuned in, when you're tapped in, you don't have to figure things out. You don't have to analyze them. That if you find your mind going to figure things out, to try to understand them or to analyze them, shut that down. Stop. Start breathing, deep breathing through the nose, and call upon your higher Holy Spirit self and just say, oh, I've fallen into ego. I don't have to figure everything out. Only someone who's totally identified with the ego feels disconnected from the flow of love intelligence that knows everything at all times. always knows the highest and best in every single moment. Don't waste your time trying to analyze things and figure them out. It is completely unnecessary. It is a sign that you feel separate from your holiness, and you never are. Now, when we're convinced of it, we don't trust inspiration, intuition. And that development of trust doesn't have to be a process, but it usually is. And the fact that it is usually a process is not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. It's like if you would like to learn how to skydive, it's going to be a process. If you're learning to trust, it's a process. If you're learning to ski, like my friend Karen J. Gardner, she's a ski instructor. Spirit told her to start learning how to ski, and then she became a ski instructor. She's a Course in Miracles teacher. She didn't need to become a ski instructor, but that's how Spirit is teaching her through becoming a ski instructor. Who would have thought that? That's not her whole life. She became a ski instructor late in her life. Who does that, right? But Spirit will guide us to the highest and best ways for us to work with our mind if we're willing. And so I know I'm way over my time here. Let me just see. Okay. Figure out. Oh, I'm going to cancel that. Allow yourself to understand what your true priorities are from your higher intelligence. And know if you pick living as the peace of God, knowing the joy of God, living from joy, whatever words make sense to you. I've got mine, you've got yours, it doesn't matter. But focus on that this year. And then notice when you have an opportunity to focus on that, maybe to do some contemplation. Spirit's saying, why don't you contemplate that joy of God, that Christ mind? Just sit there and say, Holy Spirit, teach me about the Christ mind. I'm interested in discovering what I already know about the Christ mind that I might think I've forgotten. Let me understand that. And then you're sitting there, because this used to happen to me all the time. You're sitting there and you think, I should get that laundry done. You know what? I'm just going to get that laundry started. And then you get the laundry started, and then you see the dishes in the sink, right? And then you think, oh, you know what? I better go get some things for dinner, because I think, and you totally forget about the Christ mind, because it's not actually your priority. But if you make the higher wisdom your true priority, I'm telling you, everything else will take care of itself. And that is the development of trust. It's powerful and it's beautiful and it's life-changing. And this is the thing that you can teach yourself. But it's just something that might work for other people, but not for you until you allow it. You don't make it happen. We have our personalities. We can only make things happen in a Nike, just do it kind of way. That's not what we're doing. We're allowing divinity, which is our true nature, to lead us, guide us, and direct us to the highest and best. And not arguing with our holiness anymore, and not allowing ourselves to focus on lack and limitation anymore, scarcity anymore. So this is absolutely life-changing. And this is what I am interested in. And this is why I do exactly what I do. It's what every program I offer is about shifting our thinking, out of the stinking. So you can help yourself tremendously if you are willing to say, what are my true priorities this year? And then keep your attention on your true priorities. Everything else will take care of itself. You will be led and guided in the most delightful and surprising ways. You know, my brother, who co-owns the house with me, he was, because we rent it most of the time, it's the only way we can afford to keep it. We get to use it a few weeks a year, and if we get to come here at any other time, it's just maintenance, you know. So, but hey, I'd like to leave it to my brother's children, and so that's important to me. Pay for the house and leave it for them. My brother was calling different builders and construction people and, you know, just going on and on and on, laboring and laboring and laboring to find somebody who would do the work with us, for us. He was so frustrated. People not returning calls, people saying they're going to do it, but they can't say when. Years are going by, literally, and nothing is happening, no progress. And he's so frustrated. People say they're going to call, they don't call. They say they're going to respond, they don't respond. They say they'll give you an idea what it costs, they don't give you an idea. He was so frustrated and irritated with it. How did it get resolved? Bill asks me, how's that going? It's not going well at all, Bill. I'll do it for you. I didn't make any calls. I didn't go looking for referrals. I didn't do any of those things. And I know that Bill did a better job than anybody else because he's incredibly meticulous. And if he's not super happy with it, he's going to take it out and do it all over again. And there were times when he did that. That's how it goes when you're willing to just be in the flow of love and let spirit guide you and direct you and stop trying to make it happen. It's extraordinary, and it does require trust. That's why it's the number one characteristic of God's teachers. Because until you really trust God, you're going to teach distrust. And a lot of spiritual teachers do. They teach distrust. If you watch how they live, you see that they are not teaching trust. They're talking about trust, but they don't actually have it. But that's not our way. That's not our way. And there's nothing wrong with their learning that I'm saying something, but it's not what I'm doing. I lived in that space for 15 years, talking about spiritual principle and teachings and not living it. Living it here and there, sort of, kind of, but not living it all the time. There's the appearance that living it all the time will be hard. Let me just tell you, that is the biggest trick of the ego. It's like, you know, the ego took the teachings of Jesus and turned them into teachings of sin and corruption. Jesus never called anybody a sinner, just the opposite. But what do people who are religious people who say they love the teachings of Jesus, they're always calling people sinners, right? That's the insanity of the ego. So the insanity of the ego will say, don't trust. Don't trust. And will tell us to have faith in the ego. Anyway, obviously I could go on and on and on happily, very happily. But let's do this. So I'm going to invite you to place your hands on your hearts. Take a deep breath through the nose, a few deep breaths here as we are tuning in let's just go to that higher wisdom here and now. What are my actual priorities this year? Not thinking about it, just allowing it to be known. What are my actual priorities this year? What are my spiritual priorities this year? Right now in my life, what are the spiritual priorities? What are my spiritual priorities right now?